like Raven Symone for Raven Baxter, when you are so heavily recognized and remembered for a particular character, I think sometimes people fail to distinguish the difference. I think Frank Ocean is responsible for being one of the goated black queer entertainers that eased the normalization for black queer celebrities and black queer people. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I hope you're hydrated, looking after yourself, all the good things. Hope you're well. Hope you missed me. Okay. My name is Jord and I'm switching it up. Guys, I want to have a conversation about if you're really able to thrive in the spotlight as a black queer celebrity. I think there's always been a very distinct difference with the treatment of black and POC celebrities compared to whites. I think that there's been a very interesting power dynamic and hierarchy. I think the conversation is really essential and really necessary for the culture. I think sometimes we can be very I don't know, surprised, I guess, by the way they're treated. Like sometimes I'll see things and I think, oh, like that's really obscure. And sometimes I think it takes, as a black queer person, being in that frame of mind or being in that position to like fully like grasp it, you know? So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about like some celebrities I have in mind and then like the background behind it. And yeah, let's go. I think the way I wanted to do this was I wanted to like have a conversation openly about like particular black celebrities I think who I love and who are successful, but have been, I don't know, but have had very interesting experiences which have become quite noticeable to me, you know? How do I start this? Oh, sorry, my camera just died. For those of you who do not know Raven Symone, I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm genuinely sorry to hear that. So Raven Symone is a black queer actress. She has been in the industry since she was a toddler. She was known noticeably for roles when she was younger, for being in the Bill Cosby Show and being on Hanging with Mr. Cooper. She probably grew to prominence and probably the prime point of her career in 2003 when she landed the gig of Raven Baxter Disney Channel show That's So Raven. She is the first black woman ever to have a TV show named after her, and this show was groundbreaking. This show talked about things from racism to body image to the effects of smoking. It was a very important show for the culture. And Raven Baxter, her character, she was very feminine. She was very boy focused. She matched a lot of the traits as a straight woman would. And I think that's where the complication can come in place. Raven was also very well known for being a cheetah girl, one of the probably the first Disney film series that showcased a range of different women of color, you know, women women who weren't like slim thin. You know, Raven has been at the forefront and behind the scenes for a lot of the significant storytelling at Disney. You know, she's a really important part of the culture. But I think sometimes I think sometimes, like Raven Symone for Raven Baxter, when you are so heavily recognized and remembered for a particular character, I think sometimes people fail to distinguish the difference between the character and the actress. You know, Raven Symone came out publicly in 2013. 2013. It was actually when I believe a law had been passed. Yeah, so Raven Symone came out in August 2013, where she basically tweeted, "I can finally get married. Yay, government, so proud of you." And this was in 2013. And she then went on to do an interview with Oprah the following year about how she didn't want to be labeled gay. But unfortunately, because the focus of the interview, of the conversation, was to talk about being out as a black queer woman. But annoyingly, because she stated that she didn't want to be labeled and known and recognized as African American, the pups and the tabloids misread the intention and switched the narrative completely. And I think that just kind of shows and suggests how the focus of someone who is queer and black wasn't prominent enough. You know, like someone who's been in this industry for decades, their intention wasn't recognized or appreciated. Instead, the switch was flipped and the focus turned onto a race debate, which was meant to be a minor, insignificant comment. However, it got read the wrong way. And I think that can kind of be an example as to how black celebs are treated. Their sexuality isn't a priority, and it's not an interest to a lot of people, or maybe not so much in 2014. And I just think, like, if someone who is of that level of fame and that level of power is unable to get the respected reach and response to a very vulnerable story, like the industry sounds rough, the industry sounds hard, and I just think it's quite demoralizing and insensitive to completely ignore that, you know. And I love Raven Symone. I think she's one of the most important figures in TV. You know, I think that So Raven was so ahead of its time. I think Raven Symone has done so much for the culture. However, I am glad to say, though, she did the remake Raven's Home, which was a massive success, and she's now signed a deal with Disney where she's going to be working as an executive producer for multiple shows. So I'm really glad to see that despite having those experiences where her story was not as appreciated as it should have been, I'm glad that it hasn't stopped her from being able to get the bag. You know, she's so deserving of her success. I just think it's a bit of a misfortune and a bit of an annoyance how the industry had the potential to showcase a really important story about one of the most important black queer actresses alive, but you had to make it a race debate, you know? And I don't know if that's a coincidence. I don't know if that's just a misfortune. I don't know, but it just feels a bit, you know what the intention is when you're having those interviews. There's a whole team behind it. But when you are in an opportunity where you can create more press or more coverage, it just shows where the priorities lie, annoyingly. I also want to talk about Frank Ocean. Frank Ocean is incredible. Frank Ocean is one of the most important musicians of today. I don't think there's been an individual since Lauryn Hill that has been able to make such a little amount of albums and still be one of the most respected in the game. Frank Ocean is probably responsible and credible for the landscape and the shift in connotations in R&B and hip hop. And Frank Ocean's an interesting one because for the vast majority of his career, he's been very open and very candid and very vocal about his sexuality, about his queerness. And I think that's something that needs to be applauded because especially in the time when Frank was on the up, like let me think, Channel Orange, that came out in 2012? Is it 2012? I want to say 2012. Let me check quick. This is really annoying me. Yeah, 2012. Before even Raven Symone came out, that was a time where like it was still, I mean, America is a bit more fast forward thinking than the UK, to be honest. But like, it was still like a time when those conversations surrounding queerness was still a bit like taboo. They were still a bit like hit and miss. They were still a bit, oh, I'm not too sure actually, And I applaud Frank. I think Frank Ocean is responsible for being one of the goated black queer entertainers that eased the normalization for black queer celebrities and black queer people in mainstream. I honestly do not think there has been a black queer person that has received as much love as Frank Ocean. I think because Frank Ocean's music is so universal and so applicable to everyone, especially straight men. I think because Frank Ocean's music appeals to straight men, he's been able to hold on to that piece of validation which has allowed him to persistently be in a mainstream space. I think because his music is so highly relatable and can easily be associated with hetero relationships and encounters with women, because he happens to have reached the appeal of the most powerful audience, which is straight men, straight white men as well. I think that has a responsibility playing in his legacy, his significance, and his longevity. People are literally dying. They're gagging for a Frank Ocean album, but obviously whether he releases it or not, I don't know. But there was a lot of speculation for a fair while before he even announced he was queer. And when he did announce, I believe it was a Tumblr post. Okay, editor, insert. It was a Tumblr post basically talking about how he had fallen in love with a boy when he was 19. And it was basically just thanking the man and claiming he had nothing to hide. And he received a crazy amount of support. People in the industry, people in the community. Like I said, I don't think I've ever seen somebody receive so much love as a queer man. But then also, I think the argument could also be Frank Ocean is very straight passing for the most part. He's a very he for a lot of the time he does blend in quite well, and it makes you wonder if he was like more like apparently feminine and more flamboyant, would he still have this incredible reign of success? If his music wasn't relatable to straight people, would Frank Ocean be as successful as he is? I hope he would be. I don't want to be pessimistic or anything. I'm just thinking like, would it still be the case? I honestly don't know. I'd like to think so. Like his voice and his melodies and his lyrics are so well put together and well constructed and like so mesmerizing. He's so deserving of all of his success. Well and truly, I just think because the society and the culture we live in is heteronormative and centers straight men who tend to also be big fans of Frank, I don't know. I just think would it still be the case? I honestly don't know the answer to the question, to be honest. but I know that he's left a very important, significant legacy. I know that he continues to leave an important, significant legacy. And I don't know, you just can't help but think, like, would it still be the case? But I don't know, because I think the only other black queer artist who has been able to even reach a somewhat similar level to Frank Ocean is Lil Nas X. And I almost feel, and I love Lil Nas X. I think he is so talented and so deserving of everything, but I can't help but feel like the more camp and the more gay presenting he is, the less success he has. Obviously, like, he will always have a core audience because he has done so much he's represented so much for the black queer community. But like, you can't help but think, does that decrease when it doesn't have straight validation? For example, so like, when he hadn't been out when Old Town Road came out and people ate it up. It was like platinum, like, time. It was platinum. Yeah, like, I think it's one of the most successful singles of all time ever digitally, you know. And it was only after that he that he revealed that he was gay, you know. And he still had a very successful album. The album still did bits. The album still did numbers. But like, in recent times, he also hasn't been as successful. I personally think the music he makes now is the best yet. Like, you know, Hotbox, hit me with your lovin', girl. No, not girl. Sorry, hit me with your lovin', boy. I know you want it. Da, da. I genuinely think I think Hotbox is one of the best songs he's ever made, but yet still seems to have nowhere near as a similar commercial performance to songs like Old Town Road, Industry Baby. What was the other one that he did that was really big? Montereau. And you can't help but think, is validation by straight audiences the route to ongoing mainstream success? And obviously, like, Lil Nas X is really successful. Do not get it twisted. Like, some of his songs I've just looked have like billions of streams, like, just on a song alone, which is a milestone and a landmark that some artists will never reach in their career, like, ever. It just isn't a possibility, you know. But I don't know. I just feel like there seems to be a lot that has shifted ever since his debut album, and sometimes for the better. Like, I love his work. Like I said before, I think Hotbox is one of the best songs he's ever made. But it doesn't seem to match the same level of critical and commercial success compared to his previous releases. And I'm just thinking, but why? Like, what's the catch? And you can't help but have that questioning in your head, thinking like, well, am I worthy? Am I deserving? Like, would I be given different allowances and different circumstances if I wasn't black? You know, like, and I think obviously when Lil Nas X first came onto the scene, his reaction from other people was nowhere near as positive and optimistic and refreshing as Frank's. I think obviously, like I said, Frank is queer coded. He is queer coded, but he's very, I don't know if he's done this tactic on purpose, but his lyrics can be applied to anyone. And when he talks about songs that are probably about male interactions, he doesn't use him. He doesn't use the he or him, you know, whereas Lil Nas does. But then saying that there are other queer people who talk directly in their lyrics about hymns, he and hymns, and I don't think their level of disregard or lack of approval is the same. Like Sam Smith, obviously Sam Smith's non-binary, but Sam Smith explicitly discusses about interactions with he and hymns. Same with Troye Sivan, two of the biggest queer stars on the planet. Same as Lil Nas X, obviously, but it's not the same level. It really isn't the same level. And to be fair, no, actually, no, let me not say that, because Sam Smith does get a lot of hate, actually. Sam Smith does get a lot of hate. But if we look at numbers, commercially alone, aside from the other criticism that comes with it, they're still doing fractionally better. Same with Troye Sivan. You can't help but think, and it's annoying because it's one of those things where, like, I don't want to be that person that brings race into it all the time. I really don't. I'm just being, like, conscious and aware. But, like, when I was, like, looking at some stats here, I actually did find out, like, let me read it. That homophobia in ethnic minority communities creates a double bind for LGBT ethnic minorities. Members of these groups experience racial and ethnic discrimination from wider society. In addition to homophobia within their ethnic racial groups, the intersection of the multiple forms of discrimination creates a triple threat for LGBT people of colour. The first domain of discrimination is racism within LGBT communities, which can make it hard for people who belong to an ethnic minority group to identify with the LGBT community and feel like the community is a safe space and valid, like. And there's also the power of the church as well. And I don't want to be that person to use religion as, like, a barrier or, like, an obstruction. But, like, a lot of black people are of faith. And it's almost like they're made to feel like they have to choose between faith and between being your queer self, you know? And I think that's something that's rooted a lot in the States, obviously in the UK as well, but I find that, like, that is the reasoning as to why a lot of celebrities struggle to find the midpoint or struggle to embrace their true queer selves because they don't think they're going to be accepted by their community, you know? Obviously, like, I'm not here to, like, big up, like, the white race, but I think to that element, they have it pretty, they don't have it pretty sweet, but they're pretty more open-minded when it comes to that conversation. They're more apprehensive and reluctant to embracing queerness, you know? And I don't know the stats exactly. I don't know if it's fair to say that black people tend to be statistically more religious, which statistically means they're less statistically likely to thrive. I don't know if that's the case, but you can't help but hear stories where it's always them saying they're fearful of being judged, they're fearful of being treated badly. And it's very much like, I don't hear these conversations a lot with the white celebrities. I don't know if that's because black celebrities are held to a higher standard. I don't know if that's because there's more expected of them, and I guess because black people, black men in particular, are so heavily stereotyped, maybe they don't associate or correlate black men, black queer people, black men with being queer, you know, maybe that's, like, not even a consideration. Okay, and the last person I want to talk about is Ncut Gatwa. Now listen, Ncut Gatwa. Listen, the day you lot see me with Ncut Gatwa, mind your business. Respectfully, mind your business. Ncut Gatwa was a really interesting one because, kind of similar to Frank Ocean in a way, he came to worldwide recognition for his role in sex education as Eric. Eric is a very openly out, camp and flamboyant gay black man. So the presumption was always that Ncut Gatwa was gay. However, I'm always under the impression, let's not assume. I was hoping he was for selfish purposes, but I also like to think let's try not to assume. Ncut came out in 2023 for an article with Vogue, and I'm pretty sure the reasoning for it was to protect his mental health, you know? And I don't think it specified what exactly, but I hear it like Like people are so invasive when it comes to people's sexuality, you know, when they want to know. And I'm just very much like, why do you actually need to know so badly? What difference does it make to your day knowing if someone's gay or not? You know, I've had it before where like people have said to me, like, oh, like, Jord, do you think so and so's gay? I'm like, why does it matter? Does it concern you? I remember, right, when I first came out. And my friends used to say to me, they're like, can we tell people? And I was like, you can tell who you want. I was like, I don't care. And I remember prior, because I think your friends always know, I remember prior to coming out, people would ask my friends, and my friends would always be like, no, he's not. Even though like my friends knew that I was very queer, but they were just very much like, and it's so interesting, they were just very much like, we knew you weren't ready. So we just kept on denying it until we knew you were. And I think that shows true friendship. But this is the same for celebrities. And I think the issue with celebrities is, I feel like because celebrities are so public and are in the public space, I think a lot of outsiders feel like we're owed something. Like when a celebrity doesn't share a glimmer or an element of their life, I think people are very much like, oh, well, like, they chose this life. They chose to be successful and they chose to create art and be entertaining. They did not choose to share their private, intimate matters with you. Like, don't be so invasive. Like, I think people are so focused on trying to get a glimpse, because I think people don't consider celebrities as real people. They kind of detach the idea that they're people with real feelings, which is why I think people can be so intrusive and so invasive and so just downright cruel, and it just isn't necessary, you know? But I guess to conclude, I do think you can be queer and black in the spotlight. I really do. I do feel like there is a lot of tokenism though when it comes to black queer people. I feel like, if I'm being really honest, I feel like the society, the structure we're in, doesn't like to see multiple black gay people thriving in one space. Like, I don't think we've ever had it where we've been allowed to have like multiple gay rappers thriving or multiple gay black actors at the top spot. I always feel like there's like a token. I always feel like there's like for example, I think there's like a particular actor at the moment who is queer and black who is thriving. Same for artists and same for other elements. I never think there's allowed to be multiple. I think outsiders are very much like, oh my God, like one's enough. And I think tokenism is very apparent when it comes to black queer celebrities. I don't think the world is ready. Well, they should be, but I don't think they want to handle dealing with multiple people thriving in that space, which is just corrupt. But I digress. I do think that black celebrities are able to thrive. I just think sometimes outside noise can make it a bit more difficult and a bit more unnecessary than it needs to be, which is really frustrating because we have an incredible amount of black talent in the world. And I don't know, I'm hoping for a switch up, to be honest. I'm really hoping for a switch up. I've got to stay optimistic, you know? I'm gonna wrap up, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. Yeah, I love these conversations. I think they're so important. I really want to be putting my 2-piece on stuff like this because I think it's necessary. I think we need it more now than ever, to be completely honest. But guys, my name is Jord Howard. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. If you have, please like, share, comment, or subscribe. And I will see you very soon.